A recent Oxford economics research said that only 16% organizations believe that employee retention and engagement is one of the important aspects which they could be focusing on, while it is still a very crucial aspect because that has a direct impact on customer satisfaction and other key business drivers. So that boils down to what kind of culture are you setting up in your organization which focuses on an employee-first approach. Hi, I'm Dr. Karthik Nagendra. This is part of our Future of Work Knowledge series, where we are bringing in HR and other thought leaders from across the world to share their perspectives on how they see the future of workplaces emerging. Today, my guest is Kalpana Munuswamy. She's the head of policy, compensation, and benefits at Mitsubishi Fuso Truck and Bus Corporation. She is based out of Japan. So, hi, Kalpana. Thanks a lot for being part of the show.
Hi, Karthik. Good morning and good afternoon to my colleagues in Japan or my HR fraternity in Japan. Thank you so much for inviting me for today's discussion, and I look forward for the very fruitful discussion in today's session.
Same here, same here. With the pandemic coming in, remote work has become the new norm, right? So how would you define remote work culture from that aspect?
Okay. First of all, let me start with this topic is something very, very important and very, very close to my heart because I have been working on this topic at least in my current company as well as Japan being a country for the last couple of years. And I have been also researching a lot on this topic. So once again, my thank you for bringing me into the right platform right now to share my thoughts and opinion about this particular topic. Talking about a remote work culture, like if I have to define it as an HR, as an ideal culture, I would call it as more very inclusive, highly engaging, and a flexible culture, which would enable both the employees as well as the company to fulfill each other's need. So, and also a culture which could also give us a psychological safety for the employees is also very, very important because even when I was researching about mobile work, one of the top things that was coming, as a threat to a mobile work is how do we get people bonded together and connected together and have a psychological association with the organization or an emotional bonding with the organization. So for that, a psychological safety is a very, very key that every organization has to work towards in enabling this mobile work currently as well as in the future too.
Okay, that's very crucial aspect that you've spoken about. But I think a lot of organizations were not geared up to moving completely remote, or now as we see, it could be a hybrid model that will come in, and especially some of the traditional sectors as well. So at least some of the IT companies had already moved towards it, but some of the traditional sectors were not ready for this, and practically also it may not be possible in few cases. Considering this is the new normal now, how do you think companies can build this culture virtually?
Okay, that's a very thought-provoking question, Dr. Karthik, because this is something that I've also reflected a lot of time because I'm also coming from a country which is not very, very open for a remote working or the mobile working, or in Japan, they call it more a teleworking. Though the government wants to emphasize it more, but then the companies were not pretty much very open before the times of COVID. But things have changed quite a bit. When the COVID hit, like everyone has to react more quickly in order to meet up the business expectation and to be in the market so that you don't get phased out of the market. So few things that we need to always keep in mind or to do an extra in order to build a culture more in a remote setup are 3 topics or 3 points that stands out on my head. Number 1 is to have a very clear and continuous communication about a company purpose. The purpose is very important, is irrespective of any generation, and especially with Gen X and the millennials, what we are moving in, the purpose is very important and we need to communicate about it. And also the values and the certain acceptable and non-acceptable behaviors, what we expect from our employees. Number two is something that I kind of like pitched in the what is the remote work culture. I touched on this is about creating a psychological safety in the minds of employees, because as you are doing a lot of research, you would also have got to know that mobile work also creates a lot of stress and anxiety of being away from the office.
Yeah.
And number three is like, in order to do the first 2 points, what I spoke about communication and also to create a psychological safety, we have to proactively educate and develop our front-end leaders and managers to lead their team more effectively in a remote setup. Because end of the day, they are the one who are exhibiting the culture in front of the employees in their day-to-day activities. So they should be a champion.
True. So that's the, two very important aspects you spoke about. One is with the psychological safety aspect, and then, making the managers as champions. In fact, in our study also, it showed that over 60% of people believe that anxiety is going to really affect their productivity and performance. And about 70% of them even said, if I'm working remotely, will there be any differentiation in which how I will be measured vis-a-vis somebody who's in office, right? So what do you see some potential challenges that could emerge where we need to change the mindset of managers and leaders, because they're not used to this as well. So what do you think some potential challenges, and how can organizations kind of address them?
Okay. One of the primary challenge which I see with the existing managers, with the current emergence of the mobile work, what they are dealing with right now, and also like when we have to sustain in the future for the future leadership team, one of the primary challenge that I see is the time management. Because what they have in hand is just the 24/7, and you will accept it. And I think many leaders like who would be watching this discussion would also agree that the amount of time and the energy and the effort that the manager has to invest in a virtual setup to do the managerial task or the leadership task, like building trust or developing the team, or even like performance evaluation, or even with regard to team bonding and engagement, is much more higher than an office setup. It would have been much easier and less time consuming in a regular on-campus setup than a virtual setup. So they have to go that extra mile of creating that environment to have the right things in place. Number two, today's scenario, our business environment is also very, very dynamic. And because of this dynamic business environment, they also been a lot of demand from the managers to be more proactive and flex themselves with the changing business priorities, which also calls for a lot of time from them.
Correct.
So if you see it, and you will also agree that two important priorities are right in front of them about leading people and also about managing business. So how managers are going to use the available time in hand for both the priorities and able to enable themselves to achieve the organization purpose, that is also creating a lot of stress and anxiety in the minds of managers especially.
Correct.
And with all the stress and the anxiety, they still have to show the authenticity and also the composure towards their team in order to take them along with them in the same flock. So these things is kind of like creating a stress, kind of psychological pressure on the managers. So which is something that the HR as well as the leadership team from every organization has to work together on how do we mellow down this anxiety in the minds of the managers and proactively, engage them and lead them towards achieving both the objective which is there in front of them. So the other one aspect which I always hear from the people whom I talk or people leaders are like, how am I going to measure the performance of my team? This is something that you kind of like touched on, and especially on hunting for the talent, right talent. And even when you have the right talent identified in your office or in your department or even within your organization, but there are certain gaps in terms of the developmental areas for the right fitment, how am I going to work with them in terms of mentoring or training to ensure that the person is a right fit for the role what they are looking for. So this is also one other a fear factor kind or an anxiety that is emerging, not only with the immediate managers but the whole of the leadership team as well as with the HR team. So that is something we don't have an answer right now, but we have to explore it together, and how the situation is moving forward, and also what kind of organizational intervention that we can bring in, so that we could enable our managers to navigate through this situation and able to manage their workforce or their team more effectively.
Okay, very interesting, and especially the performance management aspect which you touched upon, right? So people are looking for transparency in that, and in fact, in our study, over 40% HR leaders said that we will probably look at focusing on objectives and key results, which are aligned to the overall objectives of the organization. So what do you think could be the role of OKRs, and how that could play a role in how performance management itself will be looked into going forward?
Here I have a little bit of a time. If I'm from India, then I would have spoken up very differently. But since Japan being a country with a lot of overtime, and time management is also something has to be looked into when we consider the performance. So a little bit of a dilemma when I always think about this topic. But the three key aspects that I always think which is very, very important for a performance, irrespective of current or in the future situation, is all about having a clear expectation being set. And make the team members clearly aware of what is being expected of them. And one of the system I always enjoy working, but then like I have a constraint with that, is like allowing and giving the flexibility to the employees to choose the way that they want to work, looking at only the result as the net factor, not looking at like how many hours they are putting in, but then most to do with the result, like what we look forward for. And that is something that I, as a HR, would always emphasize on more than the effort. Yeah, effort is very important, but then like what more to look into is also about the result, what they are achieving it, and also to provide the right amount of developmental opportunity, say it be virtual or a physical setup. So this is three things that I would definitely would have a stronger focus in the future, what it is right now in the current. But I'm also like very, very looking forward how things would change in Japan, for me also to have an understanding, especially with regard to the physical presence and the overtime that is quite very prevalent in Japan.
Yeah. That's very interesting angle to also explore. And I think as the Gen Z workforce comes into picture, these things will have to go through radical changes. And I think HR will be at the forefront of leading some of those changes. My last question, Kalpana, would be, what do you see the role of tools and technology in enabling all these things, the key focuses that you spoke about, and ensuring that we have a more inclusive work culture for the future?
Yeah. Karthik, I would like to touch on 2 points over here. Number one is tools and technologies are very, very important, because the companies which had the right technology in place were able to quickly sail through the COVID situation. This was very, very evident for most of us. And even in my current workday, like I use a lot of technologies, to name a few, like Microsoft Teams, Zoom, as well as the Office 365. These are various technologies that we use it, both for the discussions, for team collaborations, as well as for the workshops, what we have it here. So the managers or the leaders have to understand which are the right technologies for the right set of, or the right to, which technology is a good tool for the type of discussion what they're going to have, or what is the objective that they wanted to meet end of the day, right? And number two is like technology is very important, I agree, but it is also the interest of the manager to use this technology and be an advocate of a technology for the rest of the team to use it is also very important. Because I've also seen leaders like the technologies are there, the managers like in the organization, but they're not even equipped enough to handle the technologies in a right way. So one is the interest to use the technology. The other one is picking up the right tools and technologies for the right application is also very important.
Yeah, that's nicely put. So I think net in the future of work that we are looking at, the role of the manager is going to be all the more crucial, because a lot of them have to unlearn and relearn a lot of things themselves. They will be going through a lot of stress. And their teams are going through a lot of stress. They need to balance that out and still demonstrate results. And I think in this entire journey, they need to be advocates. They need to be champions, be it with respect to the culture that they are bringing into the picture, the kind of tools which they're using, so that you're building that psychologically safe environment for employees to perform to their potential and grow together. So thanks a lot, Kalpana. It was really nice talking to you, and very interesting to know the Japan aspect of it. I'm sure the listeners will definitely love that. Thank you once again for your time.
Thank you, Dr. Karthik. Thank you so much for this wonderful opportunity to interact with you today and share my views about the topic which I like the most.
Thank you, Kalpana.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Have a good day.